Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today we're taking a look at something a little different.
Yeah, definitely.
One of our listeners sent this in. It's a song. And the artist is Conscience, Conscience, all one word. And the song is called Family Business, all caps.
Interesting.
And
What platform is it on?
this one is from YouTube.
Okay.
And the reason our listener sent this to us is because it really digs into this idea of generational inequality.
Oh, wow.
And just, some folks are born on third base and some people are,
Born way behind the starting line.
yeah. And they're really hitting on this idea of,
Yeah.
inheriting wealth and privilege versus inheriting, mental illness or financial burdens.
Yeah, right.
And they use some really interesting imagery and wordplay to highlight this complex issue. So,
Definitely. I'm excited to dive in.
yeah. So like right off the bat, one of the lines that really stood out to me was, "Mom and Daddy pay for your tuition too, while I have been paying for my parents' young and dumb decisions."
Oh.
And it's just so stark, right? Like it's just laying it out there plain as day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really kind of brings home this point about, different starting lines for folks based on their family circumstances.
Right.
Yeah, that image of, someone's parents are paying for their college and someone else is, trying to dig themselves out of a financial hole that wasn't even of their own making.
Right. And then just a little bit later, Conscience says, "You were passed down a family business." Cool. I was passed down some mental illness.
Wow.
And it's just like such a raw and honest comparison, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's powerful because it's so simple, but it cuts right to the core of this issue.
Right.
And we have to acknowledge, the socioeconomic realities that those lyrics reflect. Like, we know from countless studies that children who grow up in poverty are statistically more likely to face, so many challenges like food insecurity, lack of access to healthcare, lower educational attainment.
Right.
Yeah, it's just not a level playing field.
And one thing I thought was really interesting, too, is that Conscience, later on, they say 99% failure rate. Y'all ain't let me forget it my turn. Tell that shit resonate. I am the one perk.
Yeah, I love that line.
So, I think they're kind of playing on these statistics that are often thrown around about people from, disadvantaged backgrounds.
Exact.
But instead of accepting that narrative, they're kind of like flipping it,
Right,
and
yeah.
being like, no, I'm the 1%. I'm going to make it.
They're taking ownership. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful, that kind of resilience in the face of those systemic barriers.
Right.
And using music as a medium to do that, I think it just allows them to connect with listeners on a much deeper level
Right.
than, just kind of throwing out dry statistics or facts.
Right. And speaking of kind of the way that they're using language, I thought that the metaphors and the similes they use are really clever.
Yeah, definitely.
Like they say, "My word's like a weapon. Who said that they never hurt, huh?" Or, "I took it to places that I know they couldn't go. Was a nerdy little baby with the prices in the flow. Somehow always pull the ladies I was crushing on the low." It's not just complaining. It's like they're actually, making some insightful commentary.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth there, but it's wrapped up in this really clever wordplay. And I think that's what makes it so memorable.
Right.
But, I also wonder, like, does that sometimes, run the risk of overshadowing the message a little bit?
I see what you mean.
Like, do you think some listeners might get so caught up in the, the cleverness of it that they miss the deeper point?
That's a good question.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough balance, isn't it? Like, you want to be creative and entertaining, but you also want to make sure that your message is coming across loud and clear.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing I thought was really interesting about this song is this recurring kind of lemonade motif.
Oh, yeah.
So they say at one point, like, "Gave me lemons for lemonade. I made a boot to sell it freshly made myself." And, it's this idea of like, making the best out of a bad situation, right?
Yeah, the classic.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, on the surface, a very positive trait. But it also kind of raises this question of, are we placing too much of the burden on individuals
Yeah, exactly.
to overcome these systemic inequalities?
It's like saying, just work harder, pull yourself up by your bootstraps without acknowledging the fact that, some people are starting miles behind the starting line.
Yeah. And it's not to say that individual resilience isn't important.
Right, of course.
But it shouldn't be used to dismiss the need for systemic change.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's important to remember that, there are programs and policies in place to help level that playing field, even if it's just a little bit.
Right. Like what kind of things?
Well, things like Head Start,
Okay.
Early childhood education programs, the earned income tax credit.
Oh, okay.
These are things that can make a real difference in people's lives.
Right. So it sounds like, going back to this song, I think conscience is really using their platform to amplify a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
They're giving a voice to a struggle that so many people face, but that isn't always acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good reminder that, privilege isn't just about wealth.
Right.
It's about mental well-being and the opportunities that you have access to.
And the support systems.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this deep dive really leaves us with a question.
Yeah. What's that?
How can we create a society where everyone has a fair shot at success?
Yeah.
Regardless of their background.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
It's a complex challenge.
Right.
And it's going to require, a shift in mindset, some policy changes, and, a collective effort to really address these deep-rooted inequalities.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
For sure.
Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks.
And remember, these are all about sparking your curiosity and encouraging you to think critically about the world around us.
Love it.
So until next time.